Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and KWBY, and again on Saturday morning at 9 on KATX and KWBY as Angela Robinson joins Terry Slavens to share important financial information to help you live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, estate and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
And a very pleasant good Monday morning, everyone. Welcome into Life Planning 101 right here on KATX, KWBY. Terry Slavens with you, and we have Angela Kennedy Robinson joining us via telephone this morning. Good morning, Angela.
Good Monday morning. Fall in Texas, aren't we? Loving it. It's nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we're going to bring a light topic to the table just because we have all this nice weather. People can maybe handle it. Probate.
Real light. Yeah,
real light. Real light.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things, beyond grief when someone passes away, it's really hard because then they have to figure out, oh my gosh, I've got all this responsibility of dealing with my loved one's estate. And that can be an undertaking that is time-consuming, cumbersome, stressful, and emotional.
Absolutely.
And so what we're going to talk about today is what is probate exactly? Who would be the person that would have to go through probate if they passed away? And then how could you avoid it altogether? Because that is possible. It just takes a little planning.
Sure.
I always tell people a lot of times we have a legacy planning process that we go through with our clients. Hope they go through it. Some choose not to, but one of the things that we really focusing on is we call it pre-probate. We say, wouldn't it be better to go ahead and just get everything done now while everybody is emotionally stable, healthy? There's no grief, there's no sense of overwhelming, no stress. And, hey, if it takes us a year to get this done, that's okay. We can just take it one step at a time. But isn't that a lot better than someone having all that fall upon them during their worst hour?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get you there. But I want to back up, and I want to tell you about a lawyer that was reading out a will of a rich man to the people mentioned in the will, and you've seen this, in TV, they sit there and read the will. Well, this is that case. He says, "To you, my loving wife, Rose, who stood by me in rough times as well as good, I leave her the house and $2 million. The lawyer continued to say, "To my daughter, Jessica, who looked after me in sickness and kept the business going, I leave her the yacht and the business and $1 million. And then the lawyer concluded, "And to my cousin Dan, who hated me, argued with me, and thought I would never mention him in my will. Well, you are wrong. Hi, Dan." I love that. I couldn't pass that one up. It has nothing to do with probate, really, but, I thought we needed a little humor first thing on a Monday morning to kick us off. But in reality, a lot of people look at those numbers, $1 million in yachts and businesses, and they're like, well, that's not me, so this doesn't apply to me. Wrong. I wish I had a buzzer to press, because that it could be the furthest thing from the truth. And I want to tell you about a probate case. Now, this is a real case out in California that took place, and this was literally in probate from 1925 to 2005. I'll repeat that. It started in 1925, and it was in probate until 2005.
Wow.
That's not crazy.
80 years.
Yeah, it's nuts, okay? It was a house. It wasn't $1 million, a yacht, a business, a trust fund, or anything else. It was a house, an old wood frame house that was owned by a Mexican vaquero that had moved over here to San Juan, and his name was Jose Rio. How about that?
That's crazy.
Yeah. Now, by the end of it, the house was estimated at about $1 million in 2005, but we all know what property values are like in California, right?
Yes.
So, that might be equivalent to a $100,000 home here in Texas.
Yeah.
But people think it won't apply to me. I don't have much. I don't have a lot. Well, here's just a house. This is a house. And so I want to tell you a little bit about the story because it's really interesting. So the gentleman, he died, okay? Now, his wife was not the mother of his children. So he died, and when he died, his wife was the rightful owner. Well, now she died without a will. So guess who comes to the table? All family members.
Right.
And they began squabbling in 1925. Now, here's the interesting thing about this house. So family members moved in and out of this house with little fanfare, and even though there was no legal heir determined, they kept moving in and out of the house like it was no big deal, paid the property taxes, whoever lived there. There was a few squabbles along the way, but this kept happening. Now, in 2005, the roof is sagging, the siding is peeling, and this is still in probate. And we're thinking, why is this the case? Well, many of the heirs actually thought that it had been settled. And the most recent commotion to it was in 1997 when one of the heirs discovered that the estate was still unsettled. So, after all being said and done, 1997 to 2005, 8 years later, attorney fees of $150,000, $1 million home was sold with a sagging roof, peeling sides, everything. Capital gains tax of $25,000, leaving about $600,000 left.
Wow.
Isn't that awful?
Yeah.
So why does this happen? What happens? And it's really due to, I always ask people, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? What do you want to be remembered by? Do you want to be remembered by the messes that you leave people, or do you want to be remembered by how you made things better for that next generation? I kind of think most of all of us would choose the latter, unless, of course, it's Dan in the story earlier.
Yeah.
We want to leave things better for the next generation. So why is it that the one thing that we never give attention to is our own estate? And I think a lot of people don't want to confront it because they don't want to think about death. They don't want to think about that time. And some people do it because of spirituality or their faith or, whatever else. But I think, you have to think of it this way. There's only two things that are inevitable: taxes and death.
Sure.
Right? So if you know it's inevitable, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Isn't your family worth the time to spend a little bit of planning to avoid something like that? That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. So when we come back on Life Planning 101, we're going to talk about what probate is. I want to actually walk you through the process so you can understand what your executor or administrator would be faced with. And then we're going to move on to, of course, how can you avoid it altogether? Right here on Life Planning 101. You're not going to want to miss it when we come back.
And we're back. Segment 2, Life Planning 101, right here on KATX KWBY. Angela?
Yes. What is probate and how can you avoid it, more importantly? We talked in the first segment about the fact that you don't have to be wealthy to need to do estate planning. And it goes to prove it with a probate case that lasted 80 years over a house that probably at the time wasn't worth much at all. But here's the deal is, if you own something, we mentioned this in the break, Terry, if you own something, you need to be doing estate planning. You need to at least know what would happen or what are the ramifications. And here's why. I'm going to walk you through what probate is. And what I want you to be thinking about as we go through this is I want you to be thinking about who you have named or who you would name as the executor or administrator of your estate. And I want you to think about their emotional state when they're going through this. Are they grieving? I want you to think about all of the family members, the family dynamics that they're going to have to deal with. And I want you to think about what they've got going on in their own life at the same time. So the first thing that you need to know about probate is that it's public. It's filed in the city or county in which the deceased resides. Okay, so if you live in Eastland, it would be filed in Eastland. And after that case is opened by a judge, that when the administrators or executors list of duties starts to happen. So they first have to notify heirs, creditor, and by the way, heirs and legatees are two different things. People don't even know what these words are. Heirs are really any relative that could receive an inheritance. A legatee is someone that's actually named in the will. Okay. But they have to notify the heirs. They have to notify the creditors. And they often have to post something in a local publication, like a newspaper. It's very, very public. And this allows interested parties, what this process does is allows anybody to make a claim on the estate that they want to make a claim. And this is where you get into, how many kids did Michael Jackson have that nobody knew? Well, I don't know.
We're still
right?
finding them.
Everybody comes out of the woodwork. And this is why, right here, this part. And then after that, it's where the real work begins. So that's not much work. You hear me say that, okay? True. So now the executor or the appointed administrator by the court is required to create an inventory of the estate. That inventory includes all of what's owned, the values of those, or getting valuations, yes, titling, how those assets are titled, figuring that out, especially if they're real assets, real estate, that gets very difficult, or could be difficult, depending on what county you're in. Probate and non-probate assets. They have to do all of that. That's a big chore, okay? So, again, go back and think about where that person is mentally, emotionally, physically. What is their own life requesting of them? That's a lot. Now, let's talk about payments to creditors and debtors. Sounds easy enough, right? See a bill, pay it off. But that might not be easily known. And it could require significant amounts of research to discover everything that's owed by the estate. And then also, to top that off, we haven't even talked about Uncle Sam, have we?
No.
So there's going to be tax returns that need to be filed. Most likely there's an income tax return of the person that passed. But then also there's probably an estate tax return. And a lot of people say, well, I don't need to file an estate tax return if I didn't have much money. Wrong answer. That is not true. If you want your heirs to be able to receive that step 2 in any kind of basis for assets and not pay capital gains, you probably need to file that tax return. That's important. So if there is estate taxes owed, let's move to that level. This could hang up the process for months or even years in addition. Because guess who gets paid first? Do you think it's the creditors or debitors or Uncle Sam?
Uncle Sam.
Yes, sir. And I have seen it. I've seen real estate, owned estates, people cash poor, real estate rich, that's farmers, ranchers, real estate owners, and they can't pay Uncle Sam, much less pay their creditors and debtors. So guess what they have to do?
Liquidate.
And I've seen it during bad times, recessionary times. This isn't a fun process. And this is something that you're asking your administrator or executor to go through. Whew, that's a lot right there, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we haven't even got to the people to get money, right? Oh, well, I guess we have. Creditors, debtors, Uncle Sam.
But not the family members.
Not the family members, right? Okay, so then, and only then, can the beneficiaries that are named in that will, legatees, okay, and or heirs, be paid. Get this. A lot of people put bequest in their will. Most people will have. They say, I want $100 to go over here, or $1,000 to go over here, or $100,000 here, or whatever. Those usually have to be fulfilled before the big chunks that you think are going to get paid out. But what if all those taxes, debtors, creditors ate up the big chunks and there's nothing left? Oh, and we forgot about attorney fees. They are getting paid too, along the way. So, what if they get eat up first and there's insufficient funds? Who gets paid? How does that work? Well, the case typically goes back before the judge to reconcile those issues, and it could hang it up for even a longer period of time. That sounds fun, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I bet if you're sitting here and you're named as an executor or administrator on an estate, you're thinking, oh my gosh, what? I mean, this is crazy.
People are they're making phone calls right now. Please take me off as your executor.
Yes, and I want you to think about the people that you're naming. You know, a lot of times what we do is we have an administrative executor for anybody that has businesses, big real estate, big ranches, farms. We get an administrative executor to do all of this. Now, there's someone in the family that's usually directing traffic, but they're not doing this heavy lifting. The family's paying someone to do it because it's just too much, and especially when you add grief to it. And imagine this, okay? Imagine that you're through this process part way and you're getting phone calls every day by a family member. Where's my money?
Right.
Woo!
And
that's a lot of pressure.
It's a family member, and it can cause problems within family members.
That's right. So we've always talked about Texas being a friendly place to die. We've said that so many times on the show. And in Texas, this process could take as little as 4 months. Now, if you've got more success, then it could be more, or insufficient funds, and it could be more, or there's a lot of things. But, if it's just simple, it could be as little as, simple, I'm talking simple, could be as little as 4 months. However, it could take as many as 8 or 9 months on a minimum in other states. And don't forget about property you own in other states. That property is subject to their probate laws, not Texas probate laws. So the bottom line is, yuck. Really, who wants to endure that pain, especially when you're, it's a time that families should be focused on family. And no wonder family members begin to squabble. Right. There's a lot to squabble over, besides just the money. So when we come back right here on Life Planning 101, we're going to talk about how can you avoid all this altogether. Doesn't that sound like a breath of fresh air? You don't want to miss it right here on Life Planning 101.
Final segment, Life Planning 101. Angela has all kinds of probate information. Angela?
Yes. What is probate? And is it possible to avoid it altogether? So if you've missed the last 2 segments of the show, we've talked about nightmares, really.
Yeah.
I think of it kind of like a poor cat getting slammed on a screen door. And that's what probably you feel like if you're an executor on an estate. You're just, pulling your hair out, trying to hang on for dear life and don't know how to do it. And it's extremely difficult. It's an extremely cumbersome process. And it can take a long time, as we've learned, that, one estate we mentioned was 80 years just for a house to probate. So is it possible to avoid probate altogether? And the short answer is yes. We mentioned this at the very beginning of the show. We go through our legacy planning process, and one thing that we usually encourage is for people to do what we call pre-probate. Why not, if you're going to get your estate done today, and you're going to be halfway there anyway, through what it would take to go through that process, to go ahead and finish it out. So when you pass, you don't leave your family a mess. You don't leave them all these challenges and stresses, and you take care of it for them. What a gift. What an amazing gift. Think about that. It really is. So you can do it. And, it really, unless your estate is very, 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 very small, it takes a little work and a little planning, and you're there. And, sometimes it's as simple, literally, as retitling a couple of assets and making sure your beneficiary designations are named right. And that's it. That's it to avoid probate. Can you believe that?
Sounds easy enough to me.
That's easy enough, yes. So sometimes it's as simple as that. Sometimes it requires reworking your legal documents. And what I mean by that is rather than just having a simple will that names everything and creates a trust and does all this stuff, that all this goes through your will and it's all through probate, your will says, hey, whatever I forgot, put over into this trust. And your trust does all that naming and doing. And you title everything over to that trust, and those assets don't go through probate.
Right.
And guess what else is the benefit to that? We talked about this briefly. It's private. It's private. This is huge. A lot of people don't want to do certain things because they're scared of family dynamics, blow-ups, problems, issues. And fair doesn't always mean equal. Yet they feel like they're forced to do equal. Guess what a trust does? It allows you to be fair.
But not be equal.
Yeah, in a way that you think that you need to be fair. That's big. That's really big. So you're accomplishing way more than just a pre-probate. You're accomplishing privacy. You're accomplishing being able to do what you want to do. I was literally on a phone call last week with a lady, and it took almost the entire call for her to realize, oh my gosh, I have choices. I can do this. It's not what other people are telling me to do. I can figure out what is important to me, and that is true. You don't have to comply with a certain guideline. You can get to decide what's important to you. So sometimes it does create reworking those legal documents, and a lot of people ask, well, what's the cost in doing that? I promise you this, whatever the cost in doing it is going to be pennies compared to the probate cost. Think about it that way. So sometimes, though, it does require more. Still, nonetheless, it's still going to be less expensive than what it would be to go through probate. And did I mention less stressful?
Yeah, I don't think you did, but I could see it. It was very obvious. This sounds like a much better plan to me.
Yeah, it does. It does. You know what I mean? And again, it's all about, this is a gift. It's kind of like when you buy life insurance. Do you buy life insurance for you, or do you buy it because you love someone?
Because you love someone.
Because you love someone. Same thing here. And whether it be your spouse, whether it be your children, whether it be something altogether different. I read a story about a celebrity estate the other day that the attorney fees and the probate costs were just eating it up entirely. And this is a gentleman that had a real big heart for charity, and charity didn't get anything because he didn't have an estate plan. Wow. So we always talk about keeping good Christmases and Thanksgiving. My question to you is, do you want to plan now, or do you want your family to pay later?
Rather take care of it now.
Yeah, that's right. So put it on your priority list. You're at home, you're COVIDing, let's get it done. 2020, we can still have good vision.
That's right.
Right here on Life Planning 101. Thank you, everyone. Have a blessed week, and join us next week. You don't want to miss it. We're going to have a great show.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and KWBY, and again on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on KATX and KWBY for more Life Planning 101.
Advisory services offered through Smart Money Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Calton & Associates Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services Incorporated is an independent of Calton & Associates Incorporated and Smart Money Group, LLC.